excellent synopsis. I did want to shout out to Dave Everett, who's a principal planner in the department, and Dave has been a common thread through many of what, Sheila, you described over the many years of really trying to bake in the needs and the policies that the Urban Agriculture Task Force originally brought to our attention, and really embed that not only in our policies, but embed it through regulation. And Dave has really been the common thread through all of those things. So I just wanted to put a little bit of context to some of the work that Sheila described. Back over 10 years ago, when we started rethinking our comprehensive plan, which is called Providence Tomorrow, the state has a very specific set of criteria that you have to follow when you, as the local municipality, are putting together your comprehensive plan. At that time, there was a section called Natural and Cultural Resources, which is basically the cities and towns have to kind of document what your natural and cultural resources are and how you're going to preserve and maintain them. And we said, well, this isn't really good enough. We need something that speaks much deeper to sustainability and the environment. And so we created a new section, as we often do, and that's how we get into these debates with the state. We don't like your requirements, but here are some better requirements that you should require of every municipality. And we've done that across the board. And for this subject, we said, each city and town really needs to have a section that's dedicated to sustainability and dedicated to environmental resources. And so we created that section and really embedded the recommendations of the Urban Agriculture Task Force into that section. And one other thing I just want to sort of point out, and Sheila mentioned it, is the goals and policies that we identify in our comprehensive plan have to match what our regulations are. So once we've identified those goals and policies, we actually have to embed those into our zoning ordinance. So through zoning, we made some very specific changes which allowed for urban agriculture in every single residential and commercial and open space zone across the city by right. We allowed beekeeping by right. And this is when the infamous chicken ordinance was proposed and passed. So all of those things come directly onto the policies. And if they just sit over here in the policies, you don't get it done. You have to actually embed it into the regulation and make sure that what we hear from the community and what everyone is trying to do, we have to make that easy to do. And the way you do that is embedding it in regulation. And then take it one step further and do what you guys have just described, making land available, making funds available, and really actually putting tools on the table to implement this stuff. And I think you gave an example of city parkland. There's a magnificent community garden at Roger Williams Park. It's a magnificent garden. There's so many great examples of that all around the city. But it really takes putting all of those tools together to make it happen.
Okay. So my name is Ellen Seiner, and I'm the director of the Healthy Communities Office. So I am a product of all of you. I am a product of this legacy of planning and development. I feel a great sense of responsibility because I am a reflection of the needs and the wants that the community has put forth in Providence. So in 2012, Mayor Tavares signed an executive order which created the Healthy Communities Office. And it was one of those really nice unfunded mandates where it said, we really need to be working on community health. Historically, the city had worked just on substance abuse prevention, which is very common for cities and as a result of lots of federal substance abuse prevention funding. But you all said to the city at some point, there's more to health than substance abuse prevention. And specifically, we think food and urban agriculture are priorities in that. So the Healthy Communities Office was created. And one of the first, I would say the two main tasks that we were first handed, thanks to some very generous grant funding from the Rhode Island Department of Health and the Rhode Island Foundation, was our Lots of Hope program. which utilizes city-owned property using city-owned property for farming production. So we heard from you that our farmers lacked access to land. And we heard from you that our farmers also were wanting to grow foods that made most sense to their families. And a lot of times that those foods, we sort of call them culturally appropriate foods, we weren't finding them at the grocery stores that people wanted to go to. And so it was a bit of a matchmaking process to say, hey, the city uniquely has some vacant land that one could grow on, and we have farmers and gardeners who are really looking to boost their market production of land. So that's where the Lots of Hope initiative came out of, and the only reason it could happen is because we had a right to do that, and in some ways it was a mandate both from the city and from all of you that we wanted to have this. When I talk to other cities, they are often working backwards, like they have this idea, but they don't have the right, or they don't have the policies and the comprehensive plan and the structure to do that. And I always sit there quietly and think, oh, that's not my problem. I actually need to do it. I can't complain about the fact that I can't do it. I actually have to do it. So, so many of you engaged with the city initially around Lots of Hope, and that grew to now 4 city-owned properties, very diverse. We have a passive solar greenhouse in South Providence. We have a very, very, very large property out on the west side of the city, and that allows for our farmers to grow for market production and make sure that our farmers markets, which we now have many more of thanks to all of you, have a place to sell and also have a place to grow for their own family. The other large task that we were handed was at the sort of 2013 time. There was a really big focus nationally on the fact that, we know about school meals, we know that kids are getting breakfast and lunch and sometimes dinners at schools, but this question of summer, what happens during the summer? And in Providence, we have, right now, like 85% of our kids in the public school are eligible for free or reduced lunch. That's significant. And so, you get breakfast and you get lunch, but where do you go during the summer to get meals? You don't become unhungry during the summertime. In fact, you're probably more active, you're probably more hungry. So the city has a free summer meals program, which is funded through USDA, and we noticed that there was particularly low participation in that program. So over the past few years, we've made very, very significant increases in participation in our summer meals program. And that is because of all of you, because of your commitment to kids, because of your commitment to connecting not just kids to food, but kids to healthy, active outdoor programming in our parks. I know we're speaking a lot about parks. One of the commitments we've also made is to having a local farmer for our parks to help be a steward and make the connections in our parks. We are currently going through a farm-to-school planning process, which is really exciting for the city of Providence. We were awarded a USDA planning grant. We know you all care about kids, and we do too, and schools are the place where most of our kids are spending their day. And so when we think about that ecosystem of a school, we're not just thinking about what winds up on their plates, but we're also thinking about how they're learning about food, how that fits with what they're learning at home, what food resonates in your community, and then also how the outdoor learning environment of a school can be used for multidisciplinary learning opportunities. I do think a lot about legacy of leadership. I think there's this fear that you have these great ideas and you have these opportunities with a mayor, and then the next mayor is going to come in and completely decimate that and come in with their next new idea. And I do have to say, under the leadership of Mayor Lorza, that was never a fear. If anything, it was bolstered and also challenged to say, okay, you care about food, what else are you going to care about in connection with food too? So we've been very intentional about marrying our food work with our physical activity work for kids. So now all of our students in the rec centers, all of our youth who are attending rec centers are able to get a free dinner at our rec centers every night. And so most people don't know about that. Actually, what you've heard is that we've also made a commitment to emergency food. So think about 3-day weekends, think about snow days. Those are days when kids aren't getting food either. And so the mayor and this administration has also made a commitment to putting funds toward emergency foods for kids too. So food is part of community. We are the Healthy Communities Office. It is what brings people together. People get excited about talking about food. I mean, there are a lot of things people don't get excited about in the health world, but food seems to bring people together in conversation. And again, the Healthy Communities Office is really a reflection of the hard work of all of you. And it's an honor to be able to do that work. And we are only as good as our partnerships with our fellow departments. I joke sometimes that we're the office that's up in everyone else's business because I want to know what you're doing and how I can support your work to help support health goals. And food is always an easy conversation starter and an easy place to partner because we know that it is reflective of the culture and the need of our communities.
So my name is Nellie DeGogle, and I'm the Health and Sustainability Program Associate for the City of Providence. I mostly sit in the Office of Sustainability, but I work very closely with Healthy Communities, especially on their food work, and I'm part of the Farm to School planning team, so that's been very exciting. So I'm also a member of the Rhode Island Food Policy Council, and my master's is actually in sustainable food system development, specifically looking at the intersections of food, energy, water, and equity within urban food systems that are under extreme threat due to the current global climate crisis. So in 2014, as has been mentioned, the Office of Sustainability introduced the Sustainable Providence Plan, which established 25 strategies to achieve goals related to zero waste, local and healthy food, low carbon transportation, safe water, clean energy, and sustainable land use and development. And all of these goals, as I'm sure you all know, are critical to maintaining, supporting, and growing our city's food system in a very climate resilient, thoughtful way. My colleagues have already mentioned how their work in planning and food access has helped develop Providence's really robust local food system that many of you are a part of. And I'm here to talk about my office's involvement in composting and wasted food recovery in Providence through composting. So I'm sure many of you are aware that the Johnston landfill is expected to reach capacity in 2034, probably even before that. But did you know that about 32% of, or around 103,000 tons of Rhode Island's municipal waste could have been composted last year? If all of those food scraps and bits of yard debris had actually been composted, it would have saved about 44,000 tons of greenhouse gases from entering our atmosphere, which is like taking about 9,300 cars off the road for 1 year, so it's pretty significant. Composting also, as I'm sure you're all aware, acts as a natural, chemical-free soil supplement. It helps bolster and improve soil quality, and this is extremely important in urban settings where soils are often thin, degraded, and toxic because of decades of industrial development. So urban farms and community gardens like the ones Southside Community Land Trust support, they need healthy soils to survive. Luckily, Southside Community Land Trust has a very well-oiled composting system and offers free compost to all of its members. There's so much more that could be done and needs to be done in Providence to improve our community's even knowledge and understanding of how their wasted food could and should be seen not as something that weighs down and stinks up kitchen trash, right, but as a resource to help keep our soils strong so we can grow and source more healthy, affordable, culturally appropriate, chemical-free food within our city. So I am my office's current representative in a community group called Zero Waste Providence, and there's an offshoot group called Zero Waste Providence Composting, which I'm also a part of. And we are currently working to build off of a community composting pilot that ran from 2014 to 2015 that was run through my office and the Health Communities Office in partnership with Southside Community Land Trust and a couple of our other partners in the city. It was called Providence Compost. So we are taking lessons learned from that pilot and that experience and looking to structure a curbside community composting pilot in a specific neighborhood that is cost effective, could potentially be scaled up for the entire city of Providence, something that would be a sustainable service. We're in the very, very beginning stages of this process. Many cities around the world are engaging in municipal composting programs as a way to reduce waste, improve soils, grow food, and cut down on greenhouse gas emissions. And there are numerous models that we can emulate. Right now the group is, like I said, in very early stages because we really want to do this right. Another project my office is supporting through Zero Waste Providence is an initiative to get 100 restaurants in the city to compost by 2020, which is a very ambitious goal, as the year almost is half over. But hey, shoot for the moon, right? So restaurants and hospitality establishments produce so much food and food scraps on a daily basis, and are, besides major institutions like universities and hospitals, they're kind of the agent zeros of wasted food. So in February of this year, the first step of this 100 by 2020 initiative, Zero Waste Providence, my office, and the Center for Eco-Technology, we put on an event bringing Rhode Island's composting businesses and Providence restaurant owners together to have an open and honest conversation about composting. And we had, I think, almost every single composting operation in Rhode Island there, about like 15 to 20 restaurants there, some of whom were already composting, which was great. So from that we gained a really valuable insight, one being that the workforce around composting is really not at a scale that could handle every restaurant in Providence, let alone every restaurant, institution, and household in Rhode Island. There also needs to be a kind of supply and demand assessment in our city, either citywide or statewide, done on where the demand is for different grades of composting, because I think we'd find we have such a huge supply, but how do we use the end product in a thoughtful way? And we're really lucky to have operations like the Compost Plan and Harvest Cycle and Roadside Revival in the state, but even collectively, they can really only handle so much. Another insight from the event was that restaurants, they want to engage in composting and other sustainable practices, but often lack the capacity and technical assistance. So from this, my office created, it's a small thing we could do, but we created a list of all the restaurants who compost in Providence, put it on our website. We're calling them the Providence Compost Champions. And we did this just as a really small way to recognize these businesses and encourage other businesses to kind of start composting. And we hope this kind of acts as a precursor to some type of citywide green business recognition program that composting would be a core component of. Zero Waste Providence is already doing so much with this initiative. They've created their own stickers and swag for the 100 by 2020 that restaurants can proudly display. They're doing really great outreach right now to all the different restaurants. We're engaging with Johnson & Wales University and students there who are working on this as part of a research project, so it's really exciting. And then, another thing that came out of that event was that people really want to know if businesses are doing this, especially younger folk. They want to support businesses that have social conscience that are taking these pretty major steps to tackle wasted food and curb climate pollution. So that's the work my office is currently engaged in related to kind of the business and community side of composting. And then finally, composting is not only important for healthy soil to grow food, it can also be used and is being used in green infrastructure projects around the city that help not only beautify our city, but they also slow the flow of harmful stormwater pollution and can actually be a really critical part of stormwater management. So thank you so much. And if you're curious about composting, just let me know.
Great. Thank you very much. So for those of you who can stay, we do have time for what I'm hoping is a rich discussion and questions and comments. I don't think this is working.
Oh, I hit the button. I turned it off.
But because she's in the Office of Sustainability. Yeah, so any comments, any questions? Looking back and also looking forward.
On the farm to school, is that elementary, middle, and high school?
Do you want to say? On the farm to school, is it elementary, middle, and high school? And the answer is yes.
I wonder, a lot of us have a lot of thoughts about this, and we probably aren't able to bring those thoughts up today, and some of us like to think about it. Is there a place that we could, if we wanted to submit our ideas and thoughts about this whole area of food and urban agriculture, food corridors, et cetera, et cetera? Who might that go to? Is there one person who could accept that? I mean, is this a team? Are we talking about an entity that can process this information?
I I was just going to say it sort of depends on the area. I mean, that's such a broad topic, and we've covered so many different aspects. So if it's more directed to kind of planning for the future and how we bake this into land use, then please reach out to our team. And I think each of us would welcome questions, comments, ideas. That's how all of this happens. So I think there's really, as you heard from the mayor, we really have this kind of cross-team approach to all of these topics, so it doesn't really live in one space. But I think all of us would welcome feedback and ideas.
Also, Doug, this is probably not the answer that you want, but 311 is a great resource. And actually, we get a lot of inquiries through 311, content, policy inquiries, and know that they actually come to us because I spend a lot of time responding to questions. It's not just pothole fixes, it's, hey, I want to know more about X, Y, and Z, can you tell me more? So I think that's also my blanket response to if you're not quite sure who to target the question to. Yeah, 311, call it.
And then I would add that, it's a small, no, I wouldn't say that. I've been here for a long time. It's a big state with small boundaries. And so there is the Food Policy Council, which has a statewide vision, but a number of people in the state live in Providence. So they would be another place where you could bring up those things too. Am I right? Yeah?
We actually have a policy survey that if you're on the mailing list for the Rhode Island Food Policy Council, you'll get an email about the survey that we do once a year. And then you can submit your policy priorities for anything that you would like to see happen, and that gets sort of synthesized and developed into a set of strategies over the course of the coming year for the coming policy season. So the Rhode Island Food Policy Council.
So, Doug, if you don't know Ava, just across the aisle. Yeah. And you had your hand up in the back, Nicole.
No, I'm good. The only other thing I was going to suggest is there is an environmental sustainability task force in the city that is tasked with coming up with the sustainability plan for the city with the sustainability director. And so, selfishly, as both the former chair of the ESTF, who did 2 of those plans, that is also a great place when you talk about integrating and coming up with proposals that then integrate into city operations. That really does provide a base blueprint for the policies and programs that the city takes on as a part of its sustainability work. So I would also encourage, as those plans are updated, you go to the ESTF meetings. They're on the open meetings portal. They're posted most of the time. They're in the mornings, but they do have other times.
They're normally the 4th Tuesday of the month at 4 p.m. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm our current chair. I took over from Nicole.
Great question, Doug. And it then furthers this conversation within the portals, I love that word, portals that can move from an idea into action. Yeah.
So I wonder if on the city's website, if there could be these entities, 311, Food Policy Council, Environmental Sustainability Task Force, addresses that could be used to collect information from people. So
there you go. There's another idea. Great. Thank you, Raleigh.
Not so much a question as a sort of offer of support in the sense of having Johnson & Wales in this community and how we've influenced the whole food system in many different ways. And we're super proud of that role. And we also happen to think that this is a great food destination with really great restaurants. And I personally have lived a lot of different places, and I recognize that we have a lot of great restaurants, especially for the population that we have. But what you might not know is that we recently passed through curriculum a new Bachelor of Science in Sustainable Food Systems, which is a degree that we are going to be building over the next 12 months, 18 months that will come online as of 2021. And there's a lot of open space in that degree program to support all of these different kinds of ideas. One of the big takeaways, and I think all of us will recognize this, is that when we talk about food systems, they're so complex and they interact with our society in so many different ways, from agriculture to distribution to culture to restaurants to religion, all of these different ways to access. And one of the things that we're trying to wrap our heads around at Johnson & Wales is how do we prepare students to be able to respond to these really, really challenging questions that our society is going to face, whether it's environmental or whether it's access or whether it's food policy. All of those things need to be addressed, and we want to prepare graduates to be able to answer those questions. So we would love to get some feedback from you all, from anybody who has ideas about how should we be preparing our future leaders to participate in this complex world of food systems.
Okay, well, I have just one suggestion, and that is that on this wonderful flyer that Sheila prepared for us, our program, you can see a downloadable book, which is free. Somebody asked, are you bringing books to sell? You don't want to buy this book, but your students can look to chapter 3. Yeah, it's a great resource because it really does give factual testimony to the power of collaboration between community and government, which is, I think, makes that complexity that you're speaking about real. And simple, actually. Its relationship is what makes it happen. Yeah. Well, I have to recognize the hand that's in the front. Ken Payne. Ken Payne, and you're already blushing, I can see. So a long time ago, we had a vision. Even before the Urban Ag Task Force, we had a vision for what could happen in Providence, what it was poised to do. And Ken Payne set us in the right direction by offering the suggestion that we work for the city on a comprehensive plan. And we all went, what's a comprehensive plan? And he said, it's the key. So Ken, please, whatever you're going to say, listen carefully.
What I want to do is add a dimension to the Providence story that the people from Providence haven't told. And it's an important dimension. How would you have left it out? I'm going to describe it for you. It's a truism that all great metropolitan areas need to have strong central cities. That's a truism in planning. You don't have a vibrant metro area unless you have a strong central city. Now, there are 380 metro areas in the United States that contain 80% of the U.S. population. Only 30 of those are more than 2 million in size. The Providence metro area is 1.6 million. And that makes it not a small state, but a mid-sized metro area. That means it can provide leadership in a metro area that's unique. And that the unique level of metro area leadership. Okay, now how does this fit into that story? Because Providence was doing an excellent job on embracing food and ag as an urban issue, it was possible to put into major zoning amendments of 2011 a requirement that agriculture be included in the comprehensive plan, in the economic development section, and every comprehensive plan in the state. And you couldn't have done that unless the major city was doing it, because they said, it's not an urban issue. Well, Providence disproved that. The second thing that happened, and you couldn't have done this if Providence wasn't also on board, was there was a law passed that said agriculture is a use by right in all zoning districts throughout Rhode Island, plant agriculture. So we're unique in New England, probably unique in the country in having those two requirements. And it was because of our central city's leadership. And the result is that Rhode Island is recognized as a center of innovation around both agriculture and food system issues. Well, everybody thinks that The go-to state, if you want to look at progressivism in New England, is Vermont. Well, nobody replicates Vermont. People see Rhode Island as, how different is the Hartford metro area from the Rhode Island metro area? How different is Bridgeport or any number of metro areas in our own region? Different. We're copyable, and we're doing it the best of anyone. And that's a statewide impact that is made possible by urban leadership.
Yes, Eugenie.
Sorry I came in late, and I tutor in a public schools here. We have a community garden there, but I'm relating my remarks now to my experience in the Mount Hope community and a wonderful garden that was put into a city park there. Water is an issue of sustainability. And at our particular garden, we don't have a running source of water. We collect water from a small shed in rain barrels. We have suggested to the city that there's a nearby water park with a roof where water could be collected. So what plans are made for sustainability in water, and what innovations can be used in the structures that exist in the park to collect water for gardens?
Well, I can take a stab at answering that. So I think when you look at infrastructure around farming or gardening or anything like that, I think you're right. You kind of have to do it in a creative way and look at what's available and how you can kind of build those supporting structures to collect water. Water is one of the biggest resource issues in agriculture, especially in a sustainable sense. So it's something that our office is always interested in supporting and hearing ideas of how to support community gardens and people who are already doing this work on how to address that resource issue and come up with these kind of creative solutions that have multiple benefits, not just, collecting water doesn't just help collect water for your garden, it also helps with stormwater management and things like that. So we welcome you to come talk to us, and we can talk about solutions and moving forward.
Just as a follow-up, what coordination is there in the city, for example, to request that a rain collection system be made from a city building? I'm just asking you to think about how we could do this. I'm not asking for an answer.
So our partner that isn't here at this table, but who we work with closely, is the Parks Department. And so I think there is an ownership piece, not to sort of punt it, but because it is a city park, there's a management consideration there.
Indeed, so how do we coordinate that?
Yeah, and I think it's a good point, and I think it's not just the coordination, but also how do we fund it. And I think that when we think, there's the rain barrel perspective, there's also, I think people initially think, we need to put in a water line. Water lines are really expensive. You also have to maintain them. And so yeah, thinking creatively about how we fund those infrastructure changes, how we plan for infrastructure changes, but then how we think about the management piece of it too.
Thank you.
Speaking of our friends from the parks.
So my name is Leanne Freitas. I'm the director of the Rockland Park Botanical Center, and I cannot represent all parks. I can just represent the Botanical Center, and in so speaking, the community gardens that are within the parks. And this year, with the help of Ellen's team and Rachel, we will have a resident gardener for community gardens, and that person will really work with community gardens to hear what their issues are, to try to help organize what some of those issues are. So that person will be, out of the Botanical Center, and will be someone who could address a concern like that, at least for the parks. And I think it'd be great. It would be less work for us to go out and have to turn off and on all of the water capacities that we have in each community garden to transfer that over to some sort of rain barrel system or something like that. So I think it's a wonderful suggestion.
a spigot is what they really need.
Yeah.
So I think that this is all so inspiring, so wonderful, but the city has to be there to support, to give them a spigot, because it's been a really rainy spring. And I know this story. I know that, I know this project. It's been a really rainy spring, so we can all talk about gathering water. It's lovely, but it's going to stop. Hope maybe, I don't know. But in the middle of the summer when things are hot, we're not gathering water. We need our spigot. So it's and I've had lots of conversations with parks, but it's about the city being responsive and realistic about what things cost and the basic needs. And if you are going to put community gardens in parks and you're going to allow for that, water. That's just, you need it. And nobody's going to waste it. It's going to go to good use. You're going to grow a lot of food, but you do need water. She's being creative because they don't have $15,000, but the city needs to be able to support these projects.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point to mention is that as the city takes on more ownership of urban agriculture initiatives, there's a significant price tag that goes along with that. So when we're thinking water and fencing, right, those are two of your most expensive infrastructure needs for urban farming. And so how do we budget for that? And also how do we justify that when we're offsetting other expenses in the city? And there's only so much grant funding can do. And so I think you're right. It's where is the money and the commitment? And then we also have to look, where is our money going to come from for that?
But to give further details to this, it's just so
what I want to do is to give more detail to that, but off floor, because we have one more comment, and then I want to have everybody talk amongst themselves and go back and visit with the exhibitors too. I'm not cutting you short there. I just want to give space for a broad view.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Welcome here.
Thanks. It's so fun to be here. I worked with so many of you, and it's so exciting. But I feel like the country has so much urban agricultural things happening. And a few years back, I was at a conference in East New York. They set up water from fire hydrants.
Oh, we're not going broader, we're going deeper.
We're going deeper. But I feel like there's solutions out there. The idea that the city, like Dave and others, have been putting forth these great initiatives to check, all these ordinances that we've been part of, we've made them happen. And I feel like water too is an ongoing problem. But there are solutions out there, and one is just working with Providence Water and the fire department to hook up a main and see if we can start doing that. So I'm kind of planting a seed in people's minds for that because that's what I do.
I think our strength is in those creative collaborations with our partner department.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like that's kind of like the fun celebration today, that there's been so many people working so hard on all these different issues, and here is a day to celebrate that and to think about, in 10 years, what's the city going to look like with 10 more years of experience. Is super exciting.
What a great final statement, Rich. Yeah. I do invite you to enjoy the exhibitors and whatever nibbles are left, and continue this vanguard. Yeah.
I think, can we also thank our hosts and the people that brought us together? Somebody had to bring us all together, and I'm grateful that they were able to make our story known. I think many of us travel around the country and people know about Providence and we forget about ourselves, and so it's always a good opportunity to reflect on where we have been and also look to what our next achievements are going to be in the next 10 years. So thank you, Catherine and Sheila.